rising, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are, spiritual community. This is Ebony Gnosticism, and today I'm taking a walk. We're going to be discussing micro-spirituality and the ego trap. But before I get into that, I actually wanted to touch base on my path and what it means for me to be doing these videos. The reason I'm sharing all of this with you is so that you can see what it means to start your spiritual journey. I don't want to start after it's already been solidified and grounded. That's like starting a movie and watching it at the end, you know? I think it's more important for myself and through all of my growth, and important for people who are watching this to actually see that there's a start to everything. I'm not perfect, never claimed to be. I am not a guru, but what you will see is realism, and what you will see is progress. And once everything is completer, once I've hit a point where we are speaking to thousands of viewers and I am interacting with hosts, then you'll see that I made that journey, that I got to that point. So without further ado, micro-spirituality and the ego trap. All right. So what exactly is micro-spirituality? Micro-spirituality is when you take the grand scheme of the Most High, the universe, God, and you start to break it down into categories that are relatable from a sense of getting people to understand them in a grand, on a grand audience, right? And so there's nothing wrong with micro-spirituality itself, but when you start to break down spirituality in a micro sense, then you start to have an issue with division. And division, the structure of division is what causes these ego traps. So I got my notes with me today. I don't want to miss any points, and I want to make sure this video isn't super long. So to start, I'm going to go with, planar mechanics. Planar mechanics is when you start to break down the human experience into several separate dimensions. You have your third dimension, which is the reality in which we experience in our waking life. The fourth dimension, which is the dream reality, the world in which you visit when you sleep. The fifth and the sixth and the seventh, etc. Astral, which again is kind of touching on that fourth dimension. But once you start to get into those, it starts to broaden your mind, and it opens up possibilities as far as your thought process, which is awesome, because that's exactly what you want in the world of spirituality. Because a lot of this you can't measure scientifically. So a lot of it's going to be driven by faith and by being able to, I would say, refer back to things that you are unable to see and things that you're unable to prove on the third dimension. Now the issue though, and how it can become an ego trap, is when you start to separate everything in the waking experience to different dimensions and different entities. You start to separate everything into these different dimensions, and you start to cause division, separating yourself and others from the different dimensions, from different entities, such as your lower vibrational entities, your higher vibrational entities, which I do believe they all exist, but it can become an ego trip, or trap rather, because you end up making yourself separate, and this can cause an inflated ego or a deflated ego. You can start to see yourself as being lesser or greater than those that you feel aren't aware of these different dimensions or even lower vibrational entities. For example, in my previous video, I mentioned how you should steer away from seeing things as good and bad. Well, that's because I'm trying to elaborate on, or I'm trying to instill a sense of keeping yourself from being separate from these things. So the next point would be religion and ideology, right? And that's when you start to separate things. I'm going to take Christianity, for example. There's nothing wrong with Christianity. I believe there are, instances in the Bible that are very accurate to the human experience, and I do believe that they are, there were prophets, there were people who were connected to the source, to God, to the universe, aligned with the universe in a way that allowed them to channel this information. However, what you start to run into when you start to rely on religion, specifically Christianity or Buddhism or Islam, is another form of separatism, division. And this can be an ego trip, because instead of taking the word of the Most High, instead of taking the experiences and the knowledge that these prophets experienced for us to help follow in their footsteps, you start to idolize the person, the vessel that was the messenger, in a sense. So it can be an ego trap in a way. So that's just one thing you want to be wary of. Religion can be very dangerous if you're not open-minded. All right, so there's another instance of, I would say, that promotes separatism, that promotes division, and that would be astrology and the natal chart, right? So these are very real phenomenon, and I do believe that you can utilize these as a blueprint in order to understand yourself better. But with that understanding, so you can't doubt that there's a universe above us. You can't doubt that the way that the moon influences the world, as far as its tides, for example, may have sway over you. I mean, this is evident in how emotions and moods change when there's a full moon. You ever hear that saying that, oh, it must be a full moon out because people are acting crazy? Well, there's truth to that. However, the ego trap in this may very well be, and from my experience, is that instead of focusing on the inner world, instead of focusing on how similar we all are when it comes to our astrological signs and the path in which we are living, it starts to promote division. For example, I'm an Aries, and so you hear a lot about how Aries are very fiery, very ambitious, but they can be very angry and can be very rude. This is a form of division because it leaves one to understand, or to put every Aryan in the box to say that they are all rude, and then they will all knock down everyone who gets in their way and who gets into the path of their goals, which that's division. That's division. So that's one thing you want to be wary of. We should be looking into what makes us similar, not what separates us. All right, and so my last topic, or my last point, would be tarot cards or other spiritual tools, for example. Now, my tying with these objects, if you will, are to utilize them in a way that allows me to channel the direct communication of the universe, the Most High, God, into a medium in which is more receptive to the individual in which I am trying to convey or give a message to. But this can become an ego trap as well, because instead of relying on the source itself, relying on God or the universe itself, you start to idolize the tool. You start to see the tool as the end-all, be-all method of communication, when in actuality, it's really just a channel. It's like utilizing a microphone, if you will. It's taking those wavelengths and allowing them to flow down into an instrument that is going to allow you to convey your message a lot clearer. But instead, you start to promote division within humanity, such as I can read tarot, and the spiritual guider, they cannot. So I must be way better than them, you know? So that can be an issue as well. So to take home all of these examples and to kind of tie it all together, the issue then becomes, or the goal, if you will, should be to utilize all of these blueprints under one guise, under one spiritual proof or truth, which is that under the Most High, under the universe, under God, we're all one. Everyone, everything, every object. If you can experience it, then it's one of the whole. You feel me? We are all individual expressions of that entity above, whatever it is, however you see it. We're all that. I'm not saying we all have the power of God, or that we all have the clairvoyancy of the universe, being able to see things as energy, as what it is. But the truth of the matter is, the only real spirituality, as far as I'm concerned, is the I am. The fact that you are, that you're here, that you're witnessing all of this, that you can see it all, that you are part of the whole. We all have unique ways of expressing the same thing. So that's what we should be focusing on more so, and not so much focusing on how different we all are. There's enough room for all of us to experience. There's enough room for all of us to tell our truth. And we should all be helping each other and guiding each other on this path. But until we can do away with micro spirituality, or at least see the truth behind what micro spirituality can cause as far as division, we're just gonna be falling into ego traps. And that's the truth. Now, don't get me wrong, micro spirituality, again, as I said, and I do believe I mentioned in all of these points, can be very useful, but they are tools to understand a grander blueprint, a grander theme, which is the I am. So yeah, if you feel like any of this was useful, or if you feel like anyone that you know may be able to benefit from what I mentioned today, then please share, like, and subscribe. And until next time, keep your vibes high and keep your mind quick. Thank you.